Okay, members, good morning, welcome back. Cheerio. Kumye. Okay, just took a minute there just to sanitize my hands, go through, kind of clean myself up a little bit. So great stretching and all that this morning. Very, very good exercises. Something that I do quite a lot. I don't necessarily go through that whole routine, but I would do individual stretches definitely on a daily basis. So important, keep your stretching up, keep your flexibility up, always. And it's one of those easy ones and great way to see improvement. So one target you should always set yourself. Lie down on the ground, measure yourself from your feet to your head. That calculation will be your height. That's quite simple. But then start stretching. So do a side stretch or a front stretch. See if your legs can stretch further than your height. And then what you're doing is you're creating a ratio. So a 1 is to something. And in some cases, people can stretch way past their height. Some people can't. But at least what it does is it makes it individual for you. So it's very important that stretching is individual. There's no point in, okay, right now we can't be beside anybody else, but if we're looking at YouTube videos or we're looking at somebody else who's able to do the splits and do all sorts of stuff. Everybody's different. Everyone's an individual, so it's very, very important is gauge yourself against you. And that's where that measuring your height to your stretchability is very important. Because as we get taller and we get bigger, we have to maintain, hopefully if we can keep it a 1, so we can stretch the same length as our body or greater. So we can always keep pushing it. As we get taller, the stretch just goes out further. So then we're maintaining flexibility. If we can do it that we can get further and further and further, then we are improving our flexibility, which is even more important. But most important though is to maintain flexibility, especially if you already are flexible. Okay, so did a class on Thursday night. Again, days of the week are just disappearing, so it's very hard to remember what days they are. So Thursday night we did a class with our black belts and we did it on Zoom. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to kind of recap a lot of the stuff that we did in that class. And they were some of the fundamental moves that we do, but it's keeping it on the technical side of things. So again, I'm going to go through some certain moves that we do through our patterns. That's very, very important that we can practice at home. So depending on your grade, members, I do get like the audience here is probably from beginner all the way up to master degree or whatever else is out there. So this is there for everybody. We're trying to help. If some of the moves that you do are not in your pattern, no problem. We can practice. We can try and go through it. So it is difficult. The one thing that, and I keep stating on all my videos is try and get it right. And if you don't understand or get it right, send me a message, send me a private message, whatever. I can help. I can make additional videos, one-on-one, do whatever we have to do. Because if we practice it wrong, then it becomes hard to correct. So it's very important that we practice it right. So last week we went through Sunkal Debi Maki, knife hand guarding block, making sure that we're getting backward motion and arms and all that relaxed. So starting position for, I would say, the majority of techniques, especially up until we get to maybe black belt level. The ready position is both knees, both elbows, everything relaxed. So keep getting that into your own mind that as soon as we go to do any technique, we relax. It's a very difficult concept to understand, especially if somebody's trying to attack us. And then the first thing I tell you to do is to relax. But that's what we have to start doing, because when we relax, all the muscles, all of everything in our body gets nice and relaxed, and then we can accelerate. And the acceleration is what's going to give us the power. It's not your own muscle. Your own muscle helps do it, but it's not the only thing. So make sure that we relax, start off, 2 elbows, 2 knees bent, hands, and then down. So there are training secrets in Taekwondo. It's kind of funny that we call them a secret, but they're published all over the internet and in every book that you can imagine. So highly recommend, after this video you've watched it, go off and Google and search out the training secrets of Taekwondo and write them down. Because if you're like me, I can read something and I can remember maybe 60% of it. If I write something, I'll remember 95% of it. And then if I hear something back, that probably closes that last 5% gap that's in there. So sometimes if you study it, you write it down, you give it to somebody else, and then they read it back to you. They're the 3 different areas of what way we can learn. And then we can, it might start implanting a little bit in. And pick one of them. You know, if it's backward motion, pick one of them. If it's the reaction force, going through the different techniques, just keep going through one at a time, and then we'll start getting better and better and understanding what the techniques are supposed to be trying to do. So like I said, we did knife hand guarding block, we did Sang Palmamaki twin forearm. That kind of covered our Chunji Dangun Great. So up to maybe 8 cup. So next ones then we're going to do is Do-san. So in Do-san, the first move is we step out to our, well, it's going to be our left. I'm going to go to the right though just to show. So from here, hands back to back, and then around. So the body finishes half facing like it's supposed to. The fist is eye level because this is an outer forearm high side block. Finishes in line with the outside of your head. So it's not center, don't bring it in here, keep it outside. So it's a high side block and then fist nice and tight and closed. Okay, so that's the first move. The next one then we do after that is we do reverse punch. What's important about the reverse punch is that we generate our sine wave. So a stationary sine wave. So we've all done middle block, stepping forward, bending down, going through that motion where it passes through the center, up and down. The next one that we have is from here, the stationary one, where we bend. So here's the relaxed position. Both elbows, both knees bent. Not ridiculous. We don't want to go all the way down, just relaxed. So from here, then we go into our punching motion, up and accelerate out. So again, start them slow. So from here, down, slow, and then accelerate. So always make sure that we try not go through, unless it is a slow motion move, don't go through the whole technique slow. So go through the start of it slow, the relaxed, up, and then fast. What you'll also notice as well is that the body goes from half facing to full facing as we're going through the motion. Doesn't just go half facing and then finish full facing. As we're transitioning, it has already gone to full facing as we execute that punch. Okay, very important. Next one that we do, Sun Togi, spear fingertip thrust. So remember, hands pointing in towards your body as you do this. So we start off, bit of a W kind of shape, real nice and relaxed, and then we drive the hand forward. So making sure we're getting that twisting motion as it goes through. Remembering, I think we mentioned this a couple of classes ago, fingertips are only meant for soft parts of the body. And Sun Togi is meant right for the solar plexus. That part right in where your two rib cages meet, your fingers fit perfectly into there. So don't go hitting yourself in it because it will hurt. Yeah, most certainly don't go hitting your friends or your family into the same spot because it does hurt. It's the whole reason why we do it. So in Do-san, we practice Sun Togi. Highly recommend, because when we get to 7 cup members as a green tag, we're doing Sun Togi and we learn spear fingertip thrust, or flat finger, or not flat, straight fingertip thrust with our right hand. Make sure we also practice it with our left hand. So one thing that we all seem to have a knack of doing is we do, because it's in our pattern, we do it with one side, we don't necessarily practice with the opposite side. So make sure we do both. Likewise in Do-san, we've done Sun Togi, we then release. So from here, if you watch the feet, I'm not going to put my hand out, I'm just going to do it because I have to hold my dobo up. So from there, we're in walking stance, and then we release. So 2 heels come off the ground, we change into like a sitting stance, but imagine if Elvis was doing a sitting stance. So heels off the ground. And then from there, we keep going through that motion, nice and fast. And again, it's driven from the hip, so the hip will go through it. The hand position from there is we rotate as we go forward. So what has happened is, you've done your fingertip thrust, somebody's grabbed your hand, your wrist, your arm, and what you're going to do is you're going to twist and go forward. Because the further up your arm is, the wider it is. So somebody might be able to grab your wrist, but if you go further up here, the gap between their finger and thumb is easy, and then it's easy to pull out of it. So push forward and twist at the same time. You'll see all variations where they bring over to the side, they drop down. It should just be twist and a slight to the left motion, because we've turned our waist at the same time. So the hand just goes forward, but as the hip turns, the whole body rotates slightly, so the arm will go slightly to the left. So from there, pivoting around, back fist strike. That pivot, that 180-degree pivot, is very difficult. Again, I always say, make sure that we pivot on the ball of your foot, not your heel. You try to do that technique on your heel, you're going to fall. You try to do that technique on the flat of your foot, it's going to be very, very difficult. So as we pivot, lift up, rotate around, ball of your foot, and then if we need to, place the foot on the ground to get your balance, get your hand position ready, and then execute. Watch that foot position on the back leg as we land in walking stance. As we know, it's supposed to be pointing as much forward as we possibly can. With this one, don't leave it out to the side. Okay. So from there then, I think next couple of moves we've either repeated them or we already know them. So then we're going to go from our punching position. We're going to go from here, lift up, and then wedging block. So wedging block, up nice and high. And remember, the reason why it's called wedging block is because it looks like a wedge. Or you're wedging your hands in between somebody. So it's not straight, it's out, like a wedge. For those people that are into board games, Trivial Pursuit, that little triangle, like a wedge or a piece of cake, same thing. So what's important in Dosan when we do this is the angle that we go back. So there's no point in going from a reverse punch here and then going out at 45 degrees. Because if we do, and we perform the rest of the techniques, we're not going to make the distance back to land back at our mark. So when performing Dosan, if we're not landing back at our mark because we're too short, then reduce that angle in. So from here, lift up, reduce the angle in. Like to me, it's only between, say, 50 and 30 degrees. It's very hard to give an exact figure, but around that. So it's, you know, halfway between half and straight. So from there, then execute your front smashing kicks and your 2 punches. Now, with the 2 punches, remember they're fast motion. So when we perform fast motion, it should be performed fast. So it's not that the punch is any faster, because we can't punch any faster than our full speed. But the transition between punch 1 and punch 2 is fast. So there's no gap, there's no hesitation, we go straight in from one to the other. The front smashing kick is performed in a normal motion. So just, again, we're just fast because that's the way all our techniques should be. We land as we perform one, we finish, but as we finish, the heel must be on the ground for that split second that the punch finishes, but then straight away it comes off the ground and we do the second one. So we roll the 2 punches as if they are going one straight after the other. So we kick, so very fast. There's no space in between the 2 punches that they're accelerating out. 2 breaths though. So make sure it's just, it's not as one breath. Make sure it's 2 breaths is very, very important. One of the things I mentioned to our black belts the other day, make sure when we're punching, make sure there's a gap between your arm and your armpit. So extend your arm out. Don't leave it in here where your shoulders. Push the arm forward. Make your arm as long as you possibly can to gain that distance. So this is all nice and relaxed. If we come back here, then we're stopping and you're trying to tense your shoulders. Very important that we don't tense our shoulders. We keep the shoulders nice and relaxed. So again, practicing all the time. Parallel stance punch. Great exercise to do. Yeah? Starting out, then we can go up, up. So again, we're getting that sine wave into it. Then we take the next step into sitting stance. Okay, recovering old ground here, but repetition. Remember, over and over and over again is very, very important. So at the end of Dosan, we've done a couple of rising blocks. We then have another rotation around. So similar to Dangun, we will rotate around, but this time we land in sitting stance. So we don't land in our L stance knife hand strike, we land in sitting stance knife hand strike. So just making sure that your 2 feet are on the same line. Because we have an awful habit, especially because we've transitioned from Dangun straight into Dosan, we have an awful habit of making it look like a diagonal stance. So sitting stance, 2 feet roughly in the same line. If they're not, lift up whatever leg you moved and place it back down to try and match it. Because what you want to do is you want your body to remember what it feels like to put your foot where it does. So if you just are in a diagonal stance and you just drag it, then your body's not going to remember that. Or if you land with your right leg, go and then you move your left leg, again your body's not going to remember it. So whatever leg moved into the wrong position, use that leg to fix it. So lift it, place it back down again. You don't necessarily have to go through the whole motion of the turning around. But just from here, if it's wrong, lift it up and then place it back into the right foot. Go through it several times. Very, very important. But while we're in the L stance, or while we're in that sitting stance, perform our acceleration techniques. So remember, from sitting stance, without transferring all the body weight over to the opposite leg, just lift the right leg or the left leg. And again, we're going to accelerate because your hand has to catch up with your foot. Your foot's only moving this much off the ground. Your hand still has to get reaction force, backward motion, all the way back through to generate. So that means we have to have acceleration. So our hands must be able to move faster than our feet. Very, very important. Okay, so moving to Won Hyo. So from Won Hyo, members, we've done Sang Palmamaki. We're quite happy and comfortable with Sang Palmamaki. The transition from there into Anaro Sunkal Teriki. Down. So again, sine wave, very important that we go from here, hip moves, arms open, body up, and then we come back down. So like an old sine wave, down is just that relaxed bit. That's the relaxed, up, transition, and then back around. So when we're doing inward knife hand, remember it's for the neck. So it should finish roughly your own chest line, which is the neck of your opponent. Don't come across the body because then you're starting to introduce the shoulder being tense again. Keep it nice and relaxed. So very important, up, around, and down. Keeping the reaction hand right up, that's almost touching, if not touching your collarbone, depending on how easy it is to get your hand up there. But again, more important is relaxed. So don't be trying to strangle yourself to try and get your collarbone. Keep it here. Typically, the middle knuckle on my small pinky finger is what touches my collarbone. Maybe I used to years ago be able to get my side fist up there. Doesn't exactly work that way now. But again, it's more that relaxed motion as we come in. So practice both sides going through. Then we get one of the first examples where we transition stances. So we start off in L stance, and then we transition stance into fixed stance. So remember, we know, because we covered this in one of the other classes, how our stances are. We should have taped and measure the stances and be able to practice over and over again. If you look at the Taekwondo Encyclopedia, and I'm sure you'll find it online, one of the training aids they used to always instruct was, cut out your feet. So something to do, a little bit of arts and crafts and all while we're at home. Stand on a piece of paper, draw out your foot. Get a bit of cardboard, because I'm sure we all have like breakfast cereals or some kind of cardboard at home, and cut it out. Make several of them, so now you can put it down on the ground and go, there's my L stance, there's my walking stance, there's my rear foot stance, there's my vertical stance, yeah, there's my fixed stance. So then you'll know by looking at the ground what the differences should be. It's all very, very important things to do. Or again, just sit at home, take a picture. But try and have a reference point. There's no point, because like here I'm moving around an awful lot. If I have a reference point and say the outside of this mat is my reference point, there's my L stance. Now I would still say this is probably a little bit small, but just for reference, because my heel is now on the other leg, on the other mat. Then for their reference, fixed stance is where my toes were, is where my heel is going to end up. So it's all referenced. Take a few photographs and you'll see the difference. If you're starting off in your L stance like this, then where's your fixed stance go? Here. Where does your walking stance go? Where does your low stance go? Now we're going back into our stretching class where it's a bit wrong. So stances are very important. They're there for balance, but they're also there for mobility. They're there to be able to move from one to the next, which is very, very important. So again, back to our position. We're in our L stance, reverse knife hand. This is the hard part. So as we come back, we have to drop. Remember, we want to relax. So as we transition back, relax, and then the hip comes into play. So we've come back, hip, fixed stance. 50% on both legs, all the way down, sitting, all the way down, body half facing again. So go through that motion, members. This is something you could spend an hour on its own practicing. So just back, bending the knees, keeping the body relaxed, turning the hip, and then driving the punch forward. Helps with acceleration, backward motion, breath control, sine wave, balance, the whole lot. That one move is a very, very important move, and it's something we then use in an awful lot of our other patterns as we go forward. Okay, so ready bending stance. Kwabiryo Jumbi Sugi. So I think we covered this in one of our other classes. But as we've gone from here, we're going to step back in. Remember, hands back. So the leg should come up, yeah, not in. We don't want it to be in, because if you straighten out your leg, where's your opponent? So if I'm going to go into this stance and I do this, where is my opponent? There's no point in kicking him and then bringing my leg in and then trying to kick again. So the hands will go back, leg will go slightly out, and then it comes up. We already covered this part about body slightly lean forward, nice and relaxed into it. We perform a side piercing kick, then next couple of techniques are fairly straightforward. So the next one in Won Hyo then is, after we've performed the fourth fixed stance punch, we come back in and then we do circular block, Dolim Maki. Now, one of my pet peeves, not about Dolim Maki, but in Won Hyo, so when we transition from here, it stays foot to foot. So make sure we go foot to foot. Don't come from here and then somewhere into this position. So stay foot to foot, then the left leg goes forward. So from circular block is a difficult technique because for the first load of moves that we've done, the first maybe year of training that we've gone through, we've always been drilled in timing. Timing. Your foot, your hand, your breath, your eyes, everything finishes all at the exact same time. And then we do the Dolim Maki and we go, yeah, don't mind that. It's slightly different. So with the Dolim Maki, couple of things. So hand position starts out. So similar W shape, except when we did fingertips, hands were turned in. In this case, hands are relaxed out. Then we will land. If you notice, my hands still haven't done an awful lot. We've just landed. But what I have done, as I've landed, the heel of my back foot has come up off the ground. So from there, we land and just go through that motion. 1, 2. Very, very similar to lunging, except it's not really a lunge because the heel is only going to come off the ground about 2 to 5 centimeters. I know that's a big gap and all that, but it shouldn't be that much. Yeah, 2 to 5 centimeters, no more. If we're up here, then we're gone wrong. So it should only be 2 to 5 centimeters off the ground just to relax the body. The next part of that technique, we can then break it down and go circle, around, and now we're in the ready position for a middle block, and the heel is still off the ground, and then we push the heel. We drive the heel into the ground as we extend out our middle block. Now, what you'll notice with circular block as well, when we do it on the reverse side of the body, the band-aid, over the reverse, so which means my body has to be turning the opposite direction. Can't do this. Has to be turning the opposite direction. By turning the opposite direction, the body ever so slightly tilts. So, depending on how we demonstrate, depending on how the words that we use to describe this, circular block can be done in so many different ways and so many variations. So, when you get people and you say you drop the front shoulder, you start getting this. When you turn your waist, you start getting the hand out here. So, imagine you do a middle block in walking stance over the front leg and then change legs. To maintain that waist twist over the reverse side, your body slightly, very, very slightly dips. Just because we want to be relaxed. I could hold it up here and go, now that's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable on my waist, on my hip, my shoulder, and my arm. So we just slightly dip. So the motion, down, around, accelerate. Remember, acceleration is only at that little bit. The first bit, we don't go slow either though. But we don't get acceleration on that bit. So first bit from there is here and around. Now, because it's circular block, it's one technique. But if you listen to the breath control, it's very similar to connecting motion. So connecting motion is when you have two techniques connected by the breath. So if you listen to the breath, so it starts, continues to exhale out, and then finishes at the end. So that's where it's connected. But because the Dolim Maki is one technique, it's not a connecting motion, but the breath control is very, very similar. So when we then move on to Yugo later on, and we do connecting motion with our hooking blocks, we already have that breath control there. So General Choi back in the day, when he was making all these patterns, he made them like stepping blocks. Everything is, you're adding and adding and adding all the way through until you start getting a hang of it. So the fundamental moves that we learned from day one, they stick with us all the way through until we hit Grandmaster stage. Never changes. You get your black belt, back a palm up in the Junde Maki, is the exact same. Never changes. All that does change, members, is the acceleration, the speed, some of the waist twist and sine wave. And what happens is the more experience you get at it, the smaller those techniques can get. But we still generate the maximum amount of power because we've now mastered how to move our body and let our body accelerate. So the more experience you get, the more you relax the body. The more your muscles and all are ready to go, and then we can just fire the technique out nice and fast. When we learn the techniques, and that's why I will always keep iterating, when you're doing sine wave, or not sine wave, but waist twist, go full facing, half facing, full facing. Try and keep them in 45-degree steps. The more senior you get, so when you get to blue belt and all, because it's easier to change it. When you get to blue belt, you go from maybe 60 degrees to 45. Yeah, and then maybe 25 degrees or 15 degrees to 0. We're getting that fast because your hip becomes really, really fast and we can accelerate it an awful lot easier. But when we're learning, it's important. Get through that whole motion. The same with sine wave. Sine wave, we exaggerate sine wave. We go down. And several reasons why we do this. 1, we develop muscles in our legs. 2, we develop balance. And 3, if we exaggerate sine wave, it makes it feel so much easier then as we progress that we only do that little bit. So you'll see some of the black belts, some of the masters and grandmasters out there, and you'll have to look very carefully to see them doing and performing sine wave, but they are. And it is really there. It's because they've mastered the art of sine wave and of all the different technical aspects, but it just makes it look easy. And that's always the great thing. You look at anybody that is good at something and they make it look easy, it's because they've mastered it. And they're very, very proficient. So rather than wasting energy, they use very small amount of it, but the actual force and the power that they're producing is far more than what we would have done when we joined. Okay, so we are progressing and moving on all the time. Okay, so that's up to Won Hyo members. I am going to stop it now because I'm going to do more of these during the week. We'll then do Yulgo and Chung-Gun on the next class. But again, all that's going to further do is pick some of the techniques that we have where we're transitioning from one stance to the next. So to preempt an awful lot of these classes, practice. If we're red belts, if we're black tags, making sure that we're going through it. So for all my first group members and some of my black belts who were, not supposedly, but were supposed to be grading in March, again, I hope we're all keeping well. Please let me know if you have any questions whatsoever. I'm going to organise a training session. I'm going to use Zoom. That's what we used last week for the black belts. I'm going to organise a session on Wednesday for all those members that want to join in. So you can use it and join in yourself. I will be videoing so again you can watch. But again, it will be invitation only because I want to go through specific and answer questions that you may have. So we'll start at about 7 o'clock, I think, on the Wednesday. Any questions in between now and then, please let me know. So I'm going to end this video, members, and then I'm going to come back straight away. We're going to finish off the class with our Bring Sally Up challenge. Now, I did the push-up one this morning, and I will publish that video later on today. Not great. I got one push-up past the second long hold down. My arms are getting tired now from practicing it quite a lot. But I am feeling that I can definitely get better and better as we're doing it. So what we will do is we'll do the Bring Sally Up squat challenge. I will do it. I'll play the music and we'll go through it. It's only about 3.5 minutes long. The first 3 minutes of it are what I think is very, very simple. Then the last 30 seconds are where you really, really feel it. So again, if you see my facial expression changing, try stay up with me. Your goal is to stay with me. I'll try and encourage you right to the end and then we'll finish it. So I'll finish this class. We'll come back on now in about 30 seconds once I set up the music, and then we'll do the Bring Sally Up squat challenge. Cheerio. Come here. Take one. Thank you, members.